Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. You know, Trump derangement syndrome has risen to an all-time high, and for some of you may not be familiar with that term. It's a term that has been coined recently, and basically it's these people that have this irrational fear of President Donald Trump, especially, you know, what the liberals do is they use certain terms in order to basically get you to shut somebody down so you don't listen to them. So instead of actually talking about facts, a lot of times they use terms like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, all these other names that they put on somebody. So when they put these terms and attach it to someone, then it takes a certain group of people will shut them down. Or really, if you're liberal, you pretty much shut them down, period. So even if you're not black, if they say that this person's a racist, then you automatically shut them down, because liberals, for the most part, are social justice warriors, a lot of them, which means they try to fight for the rights of everybody. So, but anyway, Trump derangement syndrome is a term that's used against people that have this irrational fear of President Trump. So a lot of people, they were Obama supporters, especially black people, gays, women, and all these other groups of people. They were very heavily Obama supporters. And so when you bring up the fact that Obama didn't do anything for black people, what black people say is their response normally is, well, he's just the president. He doesn't have a lot of power, or the Republicans kept him from doing things, or the president really doesn't, you know, they're just a figurehead, et cetera, et cetera. But then now, since President Trump is president, they think that somehow or another he's going to transcend the actual constitutional authority of the president, and he's become this megalomaniac figure that's just going to rule the world. So, and that's the basis for Trump derangement syndrome. They have this irrational fear of him, that he is such a horrible, wicked person, that this is the end of the age if we don't stop him, which is why you have mainstream media, which is globalist owned and run. You have all these various groups that they just hate him. They don't even listen to ration. They're, you know, you can give them a rational argument. You can give them facts. They don't even care. You could say, well, you know, so far the economy is booming and black unemployment is at an all-time low. They'll say that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. He's still a racist, white supremacist. You know, when they talk about, you know, you start to ask them specifically, why do you say he's a racist? They don't really have any evidence of these vague terms and these dog whistle terms that they say that he used, you know, and nobody has any real evidence. You know, one of the things is, well, he didn't denounce the KKK for endorsing him, but he's on record several times disavowing the endorsement from these people. You know, the Charlottesville thing, he says there was good people on both sides of this argument or this issue. And you know, black people, well, look, see, that shows that he's a white supremacist, or he's empowered, emboldened white supremacists. But they're ignoring the fact that at the same time that this stuff happens, that thousands of black boys are getting killed, and, you know, black people are getting killed in the inner cities, being incarcerated. Abortion is, you know, 35% of all abortions are performed on black people. So that's not the real threat to black people. The statue in Charlottesville wasn't a big threat to black people. Some vague dog whistle term is not a threat to black people. You know, black people are so soft and so weak that now all of a sudden we get insulted by, you know, some vague dog whistle terms. Then what about slavery and Jim Crow? What about all those years that we survived, even in the midst of not only just being called bad names, but actual legislation and violence perpetrated against us simply because of our color? But anyway, what I want to talk about today is this latest version of Trump derangement syndrome. So there's a book that came out. It's called The Shadow President. It's the truth about Mike Pence. And most of you are familiar. Mike Pence is the vice president. He's a very much professes his Christianity. And so this person wrote a book about it. It's called The Shadow President. It says The Truth About Mike Pence, and it's by Mike D'Antonio and Peter Eisner. Now, this person wrote an article about this, and I thought it was really, really funny. I hope this person is being sarcastic, or I hope it's a comedy piece, but this person wrote an article, and they said these are 6 takeaways that they got from this book. I'm trying to find the author. Author is Maureen Groppe or Grope. It's Groppe, Maureen. And this article is dated August the 23rd, 2018. So obviously this person is a far left, liberal, progressive, whatever you want to call them, her. And hope I don't offend her by using a gender definitive term. Maureen, I assume, is a woman's name. But anyway, you know, nowadays some people, they don't want you using, they want you to use gender neutral words. But Maureen sounds like a woman, so I hope I didn't trigger her by saying that. But anyway, here's her takeaways. It says, Democrats may not like President Donald Trump, but do they want the alternative? So, of course, they're trying to instill fear. And there's no coincidence that a lot of this stuff is coming up right before the midterms come up. You know, President Trump's victory was somewhat of a, you know, slap in the face to the globalists, to many of the left-leaning progressive, you know, initiatives or their you know, the type of things they're trying to push. So they're in a really high gear trying to make sure that the midterms kind of overturn the election of President Trump and the majority of Republicans in the House and the Senate. So that's why a lot of this stuff is coming out. These indictments are coming down. It's all strategic. People are getting banned from social media. People that supported Trump, mainly right-wing people or people that are deemed as conservatives, are getting banned from social media. They're getting, you know, blacklisted and all these other things, which is a direct assault on the First Amendment. And everybody, even if you don't agree with Alex Jones or any of these people, you should be concerned about that kind of stuff, because that's the beginning of tyranny. Whenever they start to shut down free speech and opposing ideas, our college campuses are getting the same way. But anyway, let me share some of the stuff this person says. So she starts off this article, says, Democrats might not like President Donald Trump, but do they want the alternative? That is probably what we hear most from Democrats, says Kevin Mack, lead strategist for need to impeach Donald Trump campaign. Well, if we get rid of Trump, then we end up with Mike Pence. As Trump's presidency became more endangered this week with the conviction of a guilty plea of 2 of his former aides, a new book about Vice President will stoke concerns about Pence. Now, again, this is all, I believe it's all strategic, that this is all is coming out at the same time. So these are the 6 things that this person took away from this book. The first one is he a Christian supremacist? Now, I want you to understand that the liberals, especially, they use trigger words, they use euphemisms, they use all these kind of things that it's really a deceptive practice, but they mask it. So when you talk about these trigger words, they use words that they know are going to trigger a negative idea. So it's not sincere. When they use the word Christian supremacist, they're trying to make an allusion to white supremacy, which is what they have accused President Trump of being a party to. So is he a Christian supremacist? Now I'm going to tell you how ridiculous this is, this particular term. It says, in The Shadow President, The Truth About Mike Pence, Mike D'Antonio and Peter Eisner cast Pence's background, Congressman, Indiana governor, Trump vice president, in a harsh light, arguing that the most successful Christian supremacist in American history. They call him the most successful Christian supremacist in American history. So again, they're using that word, and I want you to peep the game, because when they use these type of terms, they're trying to trigger something. They're trying to allude to or connect him with white supremacy, which is a negative term. So automatically, when they call him a Christian supremacist, it's supposed to traumatize you and put alarm in you and say, oh my gosh, we got to fight against this guy. So it says, he's already functioning as a kind of replacement president and is preparing to fashion a nation more pleasing to his God and corporate sponsors. So of course he's a Christian. So they're trying to say that since he's a Christian supremacist, that he wants to make this country more pleasing to his God and to corporate sponsors. A flattering preview of this book by the New York Times columnist that ran under the headlines, Mike Pence, Holy Terror. So there was a New York Times columnist that wrote Mike Pence, Holy Terror. Already has religious leaders and other Pence supporters accusing Bruni and the book's authors of religious bigotry, saying he'd never heard such hatred poured out against such a good man. Evangelist Franklin Graham urged supporters to pray that God will put a hedge of protection around Pence and his family. So I would also encourage you to pray for Mike Pence and for the president, and pray for these people too, because they got some serious issues. So a white Christian supremacist is somebody who they're describing as that wants a nation to be more pleasing to God. Now, just to say how ridiculous that sounds, and they think that we're stupid. They really do, especially as a Christian. The Bible says, blessed is a nation whose God is the Lord. So as a Christian, I want our nation to be in alignment with God's law and his commandments, because not only does it put us in right standing with God, but it also gives us an environment where people will strive and be successful. So we follow God's commandments and his laws. We don't murder each other. We don't steal from each other. We treat each other with dignity and respect. We don't kill babies. We honor marriage and family and all those great things that God has called us to do. So right away, that should be an alarm for Christians. Number two, it's not the first Pence warning. It says the authors are not the first to raise alarms about who is waiting in the wings should Trump leave office, voluntarily or involuntarily. Arguing Pence has taken advantage of the chaos of the Trump administration to amass enormous power under the radar. The Human Rights Campaign launched a campaign earlier this year to highlight Pence's record on issues important to the LGBTQ community. So again, it's ridiculous, because if he says he's a Christian and he stands for biblical values, then obviously just by the definition of what he says he believes, the LGBTQ people are in opposition to what the Bible says. So it's not that he's doing anything. It's a natural thing. It's like if you were if you're gay, then obviously you don't want to hear or have people talk about scripture that says that homosexuality is a sin. So that's just common sense. You know, if you are a socialist, then someone who's spouting capitalistic ideas are going to be in opposition to you. So this is just common sense. And like I said, I don't know if this person isn't that bright, or they think that we're stupid by writing this article. I hope people see this and say how ridiculous that this is. And then they invoke Omarosa. Former White House aide Omarosa Manigault Newman writes in her memoir that Pence is biding his time until Trump resigns or is impeached. And this is what she said, and I saw her on The View, I think it was, that she said this also. It says, as bad as you think Trump is, you should be worried about Pence, she said on Celebrity Big Brother. Okay, she said this on Celebrity Big Brother, I'm sorry. But they talked about it on The View. In February, after leaving the White House, he thinks Jesus tells him to say things. So she's on a show, reality show, or unreality show, Big Brother, Celebrity Big Brother. She said that Pence is very scary. We should be worried about him because he thinks Jesus tells him to say things. Now, this is so absurd. First of all, Omarosa is a joke. I used to have a little bit more respect for her. I thought she was just playing the game, but she's really showed that she has no integrity, and she's like kind of low life. You know, you shouldn't ride somebody's coattails and take all these promotions, and her job in the White House, she was making almost $200,000 because President Trump brought her along, and then you choose an opportunity to throw him under the bus. Now she's trying to allude to the fact that he's racist. She's trying to play into all the stereotypes and all the fears, the irrational fears about President Trump, by trying to hint around to the fact that he used the N-word or he uses racial slurs behind the scenes. Now, it's very interesting because she's worked for him and been associated with him for at least 15 years. So if she knew this stuff all along, don't you think it's very hypocritical and shows a lack of integrity for her all of a sudden, now that she got fired, to now she wants to out him? So she was okay with him as long as she worked for him, being a racist and being a bigot and misogynistic and all that other stuff. But now all of a sudden it's intolerable. So the fact that she was there all that time shows that she lacks integrity, or whatever the case may be. So anyway, and for a real Christian who actually reads the Bible and who tries to live life in according to God's word and praise, we all should think that Jesus tells us things, right? That's the whole point in praying. The whole point in listening to God and worshiping. Throughout the scriptures, it talks about people who hear from God and who say things or do things. As a matter of fact, the entire Bible is written by inspiration to God. So it just shows either Omarosa is stupid, or, and I hate to call somebody stupid, that was a stupid statement, so I don't want to call her stupid. Either she's not that bright, or she's intentionally trying to be deceptive, or she never was a Christian, because from what I understand, she's either licensed or she went to a seminary. Somehow or another, she's has a ministry license or a ministry ordination or something along those lines. So for her to make a statement like this just really shows the lack of integrity that she's displaying. Like I said, the Bible, for those of you who might not know, 2 Timothy 3:16 says all scripture is given by inspiration of God. It means that every part of the Bible declares that it was written because God was telling people to write these things, right? So if she says that we should be worried about Pence because even though he's a professing Christian and talks about how important his faith is, that we should be worried because he thinks Jesus tells him to say things. It's really crazy. Now, we were okay with the Clintons who said that they talk about dead people telling them things. So Hillary Clinton, I think it was, or Bill Clinton, or both of them said that Eleanor Roosevelt tells them things. So it's okay. Nancy Pelosi communicates with dead spirits and all these other people, right? So we're okay with them talking to dead people, but we're not okay with them talking to Jesus. So just crazy, like I said. It says here, this is, and I'm not making this up. I hope, like I said, I'm going to look. I hope this somewhere that this says this is satire, but I don't think so. The third point that this person has is weaponized niceness. Weaponized niceness. It reads here, while Pence may have cited convicted Watergate conspirator Charles Colson as a dear friend and a mentor because of the religious conversion Colson underwent in prison, the authors assert, without substantiation, that it's just as likely that Pence was drawn to Colson's lingering aggressive tendencies. They comment on Pence's favorite movie by noting that he loved The Wizard of Oz despite the feminist power of its main characters. So they're trying to say that he's also a chauvinist, right? That he's against women. Also known as misogynist, right? That's what they're trying to hint around to, which is, there's no evidence of that, just because he respects his wife and respects his marriage. But of course, those are foreign terms in 2018. It says here, in Pence's trademark, extreme niceness is not benign in author's eyes. Instead, Pence has weaponized his niceness as a tool of persuasion and deflection. So it's saying that he's weaponized his niceness. It means he's using his niceness as a tool to manipulate people. That's what they're suggesting. They're saying he liked Charles Colson, not because Colson was a Christian who got converted. For those of you who may not be familiar with Colson, Colson was he was involved in the Watergate controversy, and he went to jail. While he was in jail, he claims that he got saved. He got converted and started living for Jesus. So Mike Pence calls him a friend and a mentor because they're both Christians, but they're saying that since Charles Colson was mean, that if Pence likes him, it must be that Pence really is mean, but he's fronting like he's really nice in order to manipulate people. That's what they're suggesting here. And this is just ridiculous. Like I said, I hope this is satire. They said he weaponized his niceness and that his extreme niceness is just a front. There's somehow or another he's using that as a tool of manipulation so that we're so stupid or we're so gullible that he can just do whatever he wants, get people to do whatever he wants by acting nice. Point number 4 is, what is Pence deflecting? While Trump is who he is, it says, while Trump is who he said he was, the authors write, Pence, pious and cautious exterior, hid a desire for power equal to Trump's. The book asserts that many of Pence's evangelical friends believe his ultimate purpose is to establish a government based on biblical law, what they call Christian dominionism. And I'm sorry for laughing so hard, but that is just, it's ridiculous. The point, that's why we preach the gospel. That's why we make disciples of all nations like Jesus commanded us to, because we all as Christians should be Christian dominionism or Christian. I can't even hardly say the word, but we all should be wanting for Christianity to spread. Everybody else wants, Islam wants their faith to be spread. The only difference in Islam is they're okay with spreading Islam by the sword, as their holy book instructs them to. Our holy book, the Bible, instructs us to preach the gospel, to baptize in the name of Jesus Christ, and to make disciples of all people. That's what we're supposed to do. That's called the Great Commission. Catholics want to have everybody become a Catholic if they could, and Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and all that other stuff. So this is just absurd. It says, some of the examples of how religion has guided Pence as a policymaker leave out important details. For example, while the author suggests religion is behind Pence's rejection of policies to address climate change, they don't factor in Indiana's reliance on coal-fired power plants, a reason even some Democrats in Indiana oppose Obama's administration's efforts to restrict greenhouse emissions. So they're trying to say the fact that he was okay with Indiana using coal-fired power plants, somehow or another, that's a contradiction, because he actually created policies that was based on his Christian beliefs. So I guess they're not used to people actually saying that they believe something and actually following through with it. Number 5, this is point number 5. The authors paint a conflicting portrait of Pence's abilities. They say he was the least qualified vice president since Sarah Palin and Spiro Agnew, with his background as an inept legislator in Congress and a middling governor who didn't like to work hard and was more interested in the status of the job than the job itself. Pence, they write, was the first governor to order up a collection of custom embroidered clothes decorated with his name and the words Governor of Indiana. Yeah, that's why we should be afraid of him. First of all this is just somebody's opinion. There's no basis of fact here. Obviously, he was a congressman, U.S. congressman first, got elected to Congress. Then he won as the governor of Indiana, and from what I understand, while he was the governor of Indiana, their economy boomed and they did well. Then now he's vice president, so he was a part of a successful campaign to become president. But they're saying he's inept and he's the least qualified. How could you be least qualified if you were the governor of a state and a U.S. congressman? As a matter of fact, he had more credentials than President Obama had. President Obama was only a U.S. senator for a couple of years. Pence was a senator and a governor of a state. And a governor is the closest thing to a president, because the governor is actually like the president of a state. And states are actually supposed to be independent entities that make up the United States, which is why states' rights is so important. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that civics lesson. But at the end of the day, he wasn't unqualified if he was the governor of a state. And he was successful in both of those endeavors. So it's just really crazy talk. And says, yet despite the lackluster background, the authors say Pence has been functioning as a kind of a shadow president. So is he inept and doesn't do the work, or is he actually functioning behind the scenes? So they've given him all of these attributes. He's cunning, he's crafty, he's weaseled his way into, and I'm paraphrasing, weaseled his way into like a huge amount of power. He manipulates people. He does all these things, yet they're saying that he's inept. That doesn't sound like somebody who's inept to me. That sounds like somebody who's very skilled at doing whatever they did. He's skilled in getting elected to senator, governor, and now vice president. And he's manipulating people. He's doing all these things, but yet they're saying he's inept. So again, this is just foolishness. I mean, it's sad that people like this actually get a national platform, because it shows a lack of logic, not being able to put things together. It shows that a person is like, their thought processes is all over the place. And it really is not substantial. Like, none of these are substantial. Now, if they said that, you should be afraid of him because, and they gave you actual examples, that would be different. But none of this stuff really, he's too nice. Be careful of a person who's too nice, or that he's a Christian and he wants everybody and everything to become, to be under the authority of Christianity. Like, those aren't things to be afraid of. Those are things that are natural and normal. Christians should want everybody to be saved. If you believe in the message of the gospel, you should want everybody to be saved as well. And this is number 6. It says, pushback on religious bigotry. There is one area where the authors and Pence's supporters may agree. The book asserts that while conservative Christians, despite their vast numbers and influence, see themselves as victims, they cheer when Pence asserts no people of faith today face greater hostility or hatred than followers of Christ. In fact, in reacting to the book as it is portrayed in Bruni's column, former Pence spokesman Mark Lauder told the Christian Broadcasting Network that the column is indicative of the nerve ending of the The column is indicative of the never-ending attack on Christianity. Conservative columnist Rebecca Hagelin wrote that the media is trying to discredit Pence simply because he is a committed Christian. Meanwhile, Mac of Need to Impeach has his answer already for those worried about Pence's presidency should still push to get rid of Trump. So, of course, again, this is Trump derangement syndrome. And it is very true that over the last few years, especially during the Obama administration, there was a clear attack on Christianity and Christian principles. That you know, if you just look at the cake, the bakery that almost went out of business because a gay couple wanted them to bake a cake, and they respectfully declined because of their Christian values. There's photographers, there's other businesses, there's Hobby Lobby had to go to court because they refused to adhere to parts of the Obamacare mandate that violated their Christian values. So, you know, it's a very clear attack on, you can't have the Bible in most schools, in most public schools. You know, even though you can have in New York public schools, Muslims have prayer rooms, but Christians can't express their faith openly. So it's very clear that there's an attack on Christianity and has been over the last few years. And so for someone to say that is they're making a true statement. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I hope you see the irony, the hypocrisy in this stuff. And ultimately, I hope you don't be duped by it, because what I've seen over the last few years is that foolish people and illogical people now have become so articulate in expressing their ideas that sometimes you can believe that it makes sense when it really doesn't. You know, I had I run a mentoring program with young men, teenage boys, and there's times where I'm having conversations with these young people, and because they're very articulate and they use such clear words when they're expressing their ideas, that sometimes I tell them all the time, I said, if I didn't know any better, I would probably think what you said made sense. But most of the time, it doesn't. And it's not a knock on these teenagers. It's just that they lack the wisdom. They're young, they lack wisdom, and that's why they're in a mentoring program, because they need guidance and direction. So it is with these people, these worldly people that have it's just an attack on President Trump and what they think he stands for. And really what he stands for is his policies, and his platform was an anti-establishment. Now, some people may argue that it's just a facade, that he really doesn't believe the things he says. That's what people argue. But then by the same token, they also argue that he just speaks what's on his mind, the first thing that comes to his mind, and that this is who he is. So again, there's just so many different angles of their attack, and none of them really make sense. None of them really hold weight. The fear that they are expressing is an irrational fear. It's a type of phobia. So it's interesting that even if you disagree with gay people, they call you homophobic. But obviously, they're expressing an irrational fear, not only of President Trump, but especially of Vice President Mike Pence. And so if you want to say who's really phobic of somebody, I would say this Trumpophobia that they are expressing, and is now this Penceophobia, if you will, is really the part that we should be concerned with. So anyway, until next time, peace and blessings to you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to my Patreon. We have a lot of information out there for the 2019 movement. Also, the book and the website is out there. So please, 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 if you see fit to subscribe, to support, we'd be more than happy to accept your generous donation. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Shalom, shalom.